Have you ever looked at your project and just could not decide if this deserves another row or if it deserves to become yarn again? For a reason that you could not even explain. Because now the most beautiful project ever is the one that really makes you question your life. So by the end of the video, you will exactly know if you should frog or not, how to make the decision, and to be happy with it after all. So hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Sarah and this is my little corner of the internet where I talk about knitting, yarn and everything between the frogging. So if this is something you like, please leave a little yellow heart in the comments below, subscribe to the channel and let me know what you think of this video format where we have a little mindful knitting chat here and there and figure out all the great questions about knitting. So let's figure out how to frog or not, and here's your playbook. So somewhere along the way, the excitement disappeared and it just feels like work, and I call that the quiet middle of the project. That's the place where you ask yourself questions that are not real questions, but tangled up emotions. So surprise, surprise, your feelings and hard facts are not the same thing, but how do you figure out what you actually want when you just cannot interpret what you just thought of? And to visualize that a little bit more, I have my little troublemakers here. This one is the Mesmerizing Mermaids Shawl by Stephen West, and it's laying in its corner forever. So we should really decide if this is supposed to become yarn or if it's supposed to become a very lovely shawl. And the other one I have here is the Helia dress by Ronja Caleto, and this is also a project that sits in its bag forever, and I'm really not sure if I want to continue this, so let's figure out. Now, I'm pretty sure that every project follows the same seasons. And once I started this repeating pattern, I could not unnotice it. It starts with the honeymoon phase where everything is full of magic and imagination of how that finished long-term project would turn out. Whether it's a pair of socks or mittens where you need always a second one, or a cardigan that really needs your attention because there are so many cable charts and it's just a huge commitment because it's knit in rows, not in rounds, or maybe a huge blanket that is just a huge size, or a shawl that looks very entertaining, but it's growing and growing and growing, and for that reason it takes a while. So there is that magical beginning, then we move into the middle, which is sometimes more loud and sometimes it's more quiet. And then eventually we hit the finish line. And sometimes we do not hit that finish line. And then we ask ourselves, should we frog or not? But how to figure out that right decision could be very tricky. The real challenge is just noticing and recognizing whether decision to make, and when that point is where you really should ask yourself the right questions. Because sometimes we give up on a project a bit too soon. We just need a few more rows to get into that magic again. And sometimes we just keep knitting something that we already said goodbye to in our hearts. And there are so many good reasons, like well-chosen, probably expensive yarn, already 120 hours that you've been spending knitting on this, or somebody else expects us to finish it because maybe it's a test knit or a gift knit and there is a specific deadline where this thing should be finished. And sometimes we just start too many projects and then there is this bunch of overload of things that is just there and we don't know how to decide what deserves our attention and what is just a pile of current clutter. So none of all those pre-loved projects gets a chance to get finished. Let's start where every project begins, and it's the easiest of all, and it's the greatest feeling of all because it's the honeymoon phase. That's the part where we all completely fall in love. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole entire hobby. And in my case, with that shawl, I even dyed the yarn myself. I really wanted to be sure that I get exactly what I wanted in the exact same fade that I imagined and that I thought would be perfect for that pattern. So I really was ambitious to make it the perfect masterpiece. So the whole thing started very innocent with a few tiny stitches on top. And then it's knitted in sections, and every section feels like opening a little present where everything is so exciting, and it's making a good quick progress because the rows are rather short and it's garter stitched at the beginning, and then there's this magic moment of learning a new stitch. And I'm very into those slip stitches because I think that's just a great effect that looks like a lot more knitting skills than it actually requires. It's very easy to make, but you get a very, very good result. So this was the part that I was looking for the most. So yeah, the whole project was everywhere, and when I was not knitting on it, I was thinking about it or talking about it. And when that lovely section was done, then there started the part with the alternating colors, and then you do that fade again. And yeah, it was just like a magic transition of colors. There was constantly something new or a new technique to discover, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It was very speedy because it was very entertaining, and the learning effect was very high. And because it grew so quickly, the excitement grew with it. You know, this is when people say this project was just jumping off the needles, and yep, at that point it felt like it would jump off the needles, but as I continued knitting, it was jumping a little bit slower. And here's something I noticed. This beginning, beautiful as it is not the thing that determines if the thing will ever get finished or not. Because eventually you see, despite all that excitement and planning and yarn dyeing, I cast that on almost 2 years ago. Something must have happened in between. And that something was something I could not really explain. So I started to find the right answers by starting asking the right questions. And those questions are pretty quiet questions. Because now that the novelty is gone, do I still want to keep going? That endless rows of garter stitch. However, I think that's where the real story begins. And here's the guide how to decide. Now take out your notepads because you might want to take some little notes. So we're entering the state of the quiet middle, and this is where the excitement faded. Not because there is anything wrong, but because the newness is just gone and it starts to getting repetitive. And this is the quiet middle. The question of, should I or should I not continue? And mostly that's the part of the project where nobody really talks about. Because the beginning is exciting and the finishing is also exciting, but the middle, where everything is just the work, that's quiet. The strange thing is that this often happens when the project is more beautiful than ever, because the colors are coming together and the shape is turning out like it's supposed to be, and the fabric is growing, and you can really see the beauty that it's going to unfold. Because when you knit a shawl that's very big, then you have that great outcome in mind, and you started because, oh wow, that's a fabric piece of art, right? And for me, that was exactly what it was. I wanted to have like a little fabric masterpiece. And yes, you're getting better with your techniques, but also the progress gets more and more invisible. 2 rows don't look like much, but they take 1.5 hours. And you can't see nothing by the end of the evening. And in my opinion, that's a great gift of knitting long-term projects. They teach you to trust in the process even though you can't immediately see them. And that not every part of making something needs to feel exciting. Not every row needs to be special and teach you a new technique. Sometimes it's slow, and that's okay, but at first we need to decide that it's okay that it is slow. In fact, the quiet middle is often the part where a project stops being a new idea, but it becomes or starts being part of something real. It starts becoming a part of your life, first as a habit and later on as a finished physical product that has a certain spot or part in your life, connected to a little story while you made it. So that's the point where you not automatically assume that this is so boring, that might be the wrong project. It's kind of different. So at this point you arrive where the magic looks a little bit less like magic, but just like 2 more ordinary rows before bedtime. So how do you know whether you're in the quiet middle or whether it's actually time to let that project go? So here's where the questioning system comes in. Do you still want that finished project? And think of it carefully, not because of the expensive yarn or because of the time you already spent making it. And not because it's part of a test knit or a gift knit, not because you promised somebody else to make it. Do you still want it? Can you still imagine using it? Can I still picture that first cold autumn morning, making myself a pumpkin spice latte, sitting on the balcony, knitting on something else, and have that shawl wrapped around me and think like, oh yeah, it's so good that I have that shawl now. If that feeling is there, I keep going. And then I ask, do I dislike the project, or do I only dislike a little section of it? Maybe I just don't like the purling. Maybe I just think that the last section was a little bit more entertaining. Maybe I think this is too repetitive. Or maybe the bind off at the very end is something that interrupts my quiet mind a little bit. That is usually not necessarily a reason to quit the whole thing. Because every project has their parts that we love and some that feel a little bit more like work that is just a part of the process. The more important question is whether or not I love the project overall, in general. And then, what am I actually feeling when I think about it? Is it excitement or curiosity or anticipation? Or is it more guilt and responsibility? Because guilt can keep a project alive for much longer than it actually should. The yarn was expensive, you've put already so much work into it, you have a finish deadline, you name it. But I'm telling you, that time is already gone. And the only question is, how much time of your future do you still want to spend on it? And finally, this is a very practical question. If this project would disappear overnight, would you be disappointed or would you be relieved? If a little yarn thief came in your house tonight and would just steal it, would you even mind or would you be relieved that it is gone? That makes it mostly very clear. And that answer is often surprisingly honest because it's a little bit playful and yes, it's not a real thing that might happen and therefore it doesn't feel so dangerous and serious. In this case, I would really like to have the finished object and I would really feel sorry for it and I would miss it because it's sitting on the shelf for almost 2 years and I really want to keep it. So if I still want to have that finished object and I would really be sad that it's gone, then I would still keep going and I would not frog it. I usually stay because that's the quiet middle, that's just the work part in between the excitement of the beginning and the excitement of the finishing. But if I feel nothing but resistance and keep avoiding that thing for months, and if even thinking about it makes me feel kind of tense and a little bit unsettled, then that's time to let go. If I can't imagine myself wearing it, if I don't even want to have the finished project, even if the yarn thief came back and brought the finished thing in my wardrobe, yeah, then just let go. It's just spending time on something that you don't want. Or if I only continue because I feel so guilty of having wasted time, money, yarn, or whatsoever, that's also not a good sign. At this point, I really wonder if this needs more patience or if I just should let go, because these reasons that really make you feel bad about it are usually good reasons to frog. There are good reasons to frog and there are bad reasons to frog. But I also like to make little distinctions before I rip that needles out. Sometimes I know what I don't like a project. Then that's okay, because sometimes I know at the very beginning when I start that I don't like the second heel, I don't like the second sleeve, I struggle with casting on that second sock, and then there are little pieces of the process that I don't enjoy that much. I make a little note to myself that I'm not frogging because of these little parts. This tiny decision changes everything, because then you know what your rule is that you're definitely not frogging for. Because it's a bad frogging reason. There are good frogging reasons and bad frogging reasons. And those little parts that are just part of the process that you don't like or enjoy so much or that you think are tricky, same goes for mistakes that you made in between. You're not going to frog that whole thing because you made a little mistake. No one will notice. But there are things that I don't negotiate with. If a project always makes me feel tense. If I have to force myself to pick it even up and start knitting on it. And if I'm feeling like I'm spending my precious lifetime just doing the wrong thing and putting another chore on my list that feels like a work that I don't really want to do. And if knitting it interrupts my peace and quietness that I usually get from knitting, then it's definitely a sign that this is a project that I'm not keeping working on. Even if the yarn was expensive, even if I already spent months and months and months and maybe a year knitting on it, and even if I have to disappoint somebody who will probably not get its gift knit, then yeah, I'm sorry. Because knitting is supposed to be fun and part of my life and not part of an unpaid job or something. And that's the real difference of giving up or letting go. Giving up feels like, oh, I just couldn't do this. And letting go feels like, yeah, I'm glad that there is space for something new now. And most times that's the most creative decision that you can make. So now you are in the quiet middle and you decided that you want to keep going. What can you do? So here's 5 little tips to make it through the quiet middle. First of all, make it smaller. Don't think about finishing the whole shawl. You don't want to even think about the section. Just think of 2 rows. Maybe 2 rows in the evening, maybe 2 rows the next day and the next day and the next. That's it, just 2 rows. Those 2 rows might feel insignificant now, but they really will make an impact. Maybe it's just taken those 3 or 4 days of, okay, 2 rows, then 2 rows and 2 rows until it gets rolling again. Tip number 2 is make visible progress. And I'm not talking about progress keepers, even though that this is a very nice playful trick to see how far you've come. But when your progress is so tiny, then you don't want to have like a little marker every 2 rows because it's getting ridiculous. So my tip would be take a picture in your phone, make a folder and name it your project. And then before you start knitting, take a picture. And then you will see how it grows without having 5 million stitch markers pulling down your stitches. Take a picture when you start knitting it. Take a picture when you put it back and put it in your phone folder, and then you have a little library of visible progress. If you are a little bit more analytic than visual, then you might weight your yarn. That's very nice if you are a person who likes putting things in numbers, because sometimes you can understand your progress a little bit more when you have it measured. So weight your yarn, write it down on a spreadsheet or somewhere where you have easy access to it. Don't make it another task, just write it somewhere in your phone, on a note, somewhere where it's easy to access. And then you write it down. And then you see that the number is decreasing. And on the other side, it's increasing. It's perfectly balanced, but you want to see the yarn balls getting lighter and lighter and lighter. That's just another visual, but very analytic way of tracking your progress. And in the same category, there is another little checklist, just an easy checklist, not for optimization, just for visualizing your progress the easy way. 4 rows, check. Another 4 rows, check. Another 4 rows, check. And then this section is completely finished, and then you can come back to your pattern, and then probably you're already in that excitement again where you don't need any external motivation anymore. Sometimes you simply need to remind yourself that this is how far you've come already. You're not gonna quit, no. Definitely not. And the last tip for this is getting the community involved. Go to Ravelry and check other people's projects and see what their progress was, where their quiet middle was, and where it took the longest to make progress again. There are a lot of project pages on Ravelry where people are very in detail with their dates and their progress. And especially on those long-term projects where you're not just like, oh, I finished the arm and the other arm and the neckline and so on. When it's something like that, people put down their dates and their progress very detailed. So you can find your progress of the future on other people's Ravelry sites. You will find a whole community where people say exact the same thing, like this took me forever, or I almost gave up, or hey, this took me forever, but I'm so glad that I still finished it. And then you see the finished project. After you saw all this progress, then there is the finished shawl in all its glorious beauty. And of course, there's something very reassuring seeing that other people went through the same process and through the same struggle with the same project as you just did. Because yes, we tend to compare our messy process to the beautiful result of other people and what other people made. And usually we skip looking at their quiet mess in the middle. And finally, this is not a tip, this is a general thing you have to keep in the back of your mind, is to accept that it takes time. If you commit to a long-term project, then you know that it will take time. And you're gonna prepare for that, and you're not gonna be surprised if it took a year or two until you finish it. You don't have to race the season of honeymoon and middle and finishing. You can just simply take the time that it takes. And maybe that's the nicest thing about knitting. There is no reason to hurry. That shawl or whatever project you're working on is not going anywhere. And if you're finding yourself in the quiet middle, don't panic. Don't immediately assume that you wasted something or chose wrong. And definitely don't just give up. And eventually you'll find yourself somewhere new, in a complete new state of creating, because maybe this was not for you. Maybe there is something better. Maybe this is waiting for you for another season of your life. Maybe there is a reason that you did not want to finish that. It's all possible. So what you want to know at the end of making your decision is, do I don't want that project anymore at all, or am I just stuck in a little section of that? You really want to be sure about, am I letting this project go because I genuinely don't want it anymore, or because I'm struggling with it at the right moment? Good frogging never feels like giving up. It will always leave you with a feeling of relief and letting go. And probably that's the best sign of all. Now, how about my projects that I have here? How about the dress? We talked a little bit. I really wanted to have that dress when I cast it on first. And I've been learning so much. I've been learning about combined knitting, where I combine my knits and purls differently when I knit in rows, and I learned about picking up stitches, and I learned about the difference of the drops bell and the Sandnes Lina, because this is not my Sandnes Lina, and somewhere I just lost interest in it. And now, from my perspective now, I do not see myself wearing it anymore at all. It's beautiful and the pattern is written very well. I really was convinced that I want to have that dress when I cast it on. Whether now, I did not touch it for over a year and a half, and it's sitting in this project bag forever. And if Yarn Thief would come tonight and just take it, I would not feel very sorry about the project. I would rather feel sorry about the yarn, because in my mind, or in the back of my mind, that yarn already became an Anchor's shirt by Petit Knit. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm going to let go that dress that I really wanted, and I spent a lot of time knitting on it. I'm going to rip out the needles, cake up the yarn again, and make an Anchor shirt. That's what I really want to do, and that's what I see in the yarn. So I want to be happy while making it, not just while wearing it. The whole process needs to be good and not like forced, you know? And with this shawl, it's so different. I have that shawl forever. I think I cast it on 2 years ago, and it got a very special place in the corner of my living room here, and it sits there forever, and I keep the project back open just to see that section. And you know, I have that slip dip stitch swatch up here on my yarn board, so I can always see it because I think it's so pretty. And yeah, if Yarn Thief would steal this one, I would be really upset. I don't want to leave you here without putting everything into a summary. You know, we need to have a little knitting check-in so you get the most out of it and you really have something that you can work with. So here's your promised playbook rules of how to decide where to frog or not and be happy with it. So first question is, do you still want that finished project or not? Can you still imagine yourself wearing it, using it, making it the full program? If not, Then you decide good frogging, bad frogging. Question number 2, do you dislike the project, or is it just that one section or part of the project that you don't like? Is this simply a boring part of the project, or does this whole thing feel off now? Question number 3, can I still imagine loving that thing when it's finished? Will it make me happy? Does it fit in my life? Do I still stick with that color choice I made maybe a year or 2 ago? You decide. Number 4, what am I actually feeling when I think about that thing? Is it excitement and curiosity and joy, or is it somehow guilt and responsibility towards something that I might promise myself and I want to keep to that, and it's just a little bit tense here? No guilt, pressure, or obligation. This is a hobby, we don't want to optimize it. And yeah, finally, if this thing disappeared tonight, how would it make me feel? Would I be disappointed or relieved? That's a very clear sign. If you ask yourself those questions, then you're probably good to go. So if you still want that finished object, but the current section is a little bit boring, or you just do not feel like knitting on it, but still the thought of the finished project makes you happy and excited, then give it some time. 2 rows, 4 rows, little progress, and then eventually the excitement comes back. But if you don't want to finish that thing anymore and it makes you feel bad, and you really are about to set yourself a date or whatever where you want to have that finished and then force yourself to work through it, then really, do you want to have a date in your life until you want to torture yourself? Or just get rid of it and make some space for something you truly enjoy? Easy decision, isn't it? You don't want to ask yourself if or how you can force yourself to finish that. That question itself is most likely a very obvious sign. So maybe the real skill isn't learning how to finish every project that we started. Maybe the real skill is how to learn how to decide which project is worth finishing and which is worth to let go. And that's, in my opinion, the nicest thing that knitting can teach us, because it's a great lesson in life whether or not and how to decide what to let go. We don't have to finish everything that we started. We just have to keep making things that we genuinely want to make, and that we decided to make, and that we decided that they are worth it. And sometimes we have to decide what's not worth it. So thank you for spending so much time with me today. I know that this was a long one, but I really hope that you have a guideline now whether or how to decide if you want to frog or not. And if you have other experience, and if you ever regretted something that you frogged, or if you ever knitted through something that you actually did not like I did with the Sophie scarf, then let me know in the comments below. And if you just want to leave a little yellow heart in the comments below, then I would be very happy, because I know that you have been here and we shared some time together today. I really hope you've got some value from this. I'll be here next week again, or somewhere here in the playlist if you like. And until then, I wish you happy creative knitting. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you next week again. Bye bye.